get to do all these types of things. And so I'm glad to have a new grandson, Trivet Joseph. A special blessing is all of my, and I'm blessed right now. I've got grandsons galore. I'm going to be teaching team roping for years. It's going to be wonderful. Nana was down, and almost 3 weeks she was down taking care of probably Danae as much as Trivet, but that's okay. That was a good thing too. So I just want you to prove that she hadn't skipped out. This is a new little grandson, and we've had some changes that are taking place. There's a lot of things changing in our world today. Some things are kind of surprising. Go ahead and click to the next one. We came home yesterday. I had gotten sick with some cold, and I was kind of down, so I couldn't move around. I knew I couldn't drive 7 hours. So I stayed an extra day, and thanks guys for taking over in lieu of this. But we were south of Bassett yesterday, and I said, you know, it hadn't snowed. You know, they were talking about it, and about that time when Shereen's driving, all of a sudden it just starts dumping. And by the time we got to Springview, there's probably 4 inches of snow on the ground. And he said, oh man, it was the 20th of May. I mean, and I'm from South Dakota. I understand this. I'm from Wyoming. We know it can snow any time of the year. That's not a, but the 20th of May, I mean, and they were huge snowflakes coming to the ground. And like someone said, man, if that had been snowing, if that had been doing that all day long, we'd have had a foot of snow or more of that wet kind of dangerous stuff. But anyway, then you popped over to Springview, and the next thing you know, you got in the valley, and you could just watch the thermometer. Wherever it was 32 and above, it didn't snow, and wherever it was 32, or in that proximity, the snow kept falling down. I thought, wow, there's some interesting things that God is trying to tell us. And I'm one of those type of individuals that when I see something, I want to know why. I mean, I'm wired that way, I think that way. When something happens, and I've talked about having a God of this universe doing all these things for so many years, that He has a plan, He's fulfilling it. So I have to ask that question, what is God doing? Whether He's doing it in me or doing it in other people. And then I came home yesterday, and as I drove through winter, we got through it, there were cars parked here, cars parked there, and Gene alluded to the fact that Winter had their high school graduation yesterday. And those are exciting times. This would have been my 40th if I'd go back to my reunion. 40 years ago, I too was celebrating that day. And Gene, if they'd asked me what I was thinking about the future, I probably wouldn't have given them that sound advice thought. I was one of those that just wanted to get out. I was done with learning from a book. Oh, how little did I know that I would never, ever stop learning. And even though then later on when I took a focus, and I did go on to post-secondary school, and I went to several of them, got a few little degrees here and there, never did find learning a great joy, but there was an important challenge of learning life lessons. And I again found myself focusing on one book more than any other book in life, and that was the Word of God. And so as I share this this morning, I think, man, there's a lot of things that are taking place in life. I had a few down times, and last week, Daryl, I think, downloaded Facebook for me so that I could, if Shereen was gone or I needed a phone, I could live stream. That, I'm not sure, has been a good thing to download on my phone, because constantly there are updates of things that are going on and on and on. And people are communicating in ways like we began with, my grandpa never would have dreamed of. My grandpa would have not been a Facebooker. That's not what he would have done. But my grandpa didn't talk either, so I'm not sure what gift it is. And I'm really in a quandary here this morning, because last week I went to a rest home service, and thanks, Judy was there, and the Mankeys were there. The only problem with it, Will said, see, you can get done in 30 minutes. So I am kind of in a quandary here of how to do that. Now, if I were to say that, well, they have the attention span, like that, but anyway, we'll go so I don't get any deeper in trouble, but we'll go till my voice quits, and everybody will cheer and say, we're done. But there's a lot of challenges going on. And one of the things that I, as a Christian, and we think about how are these young people going to live in the next generation? How are my grandsons going to live in the next generation? I don't really think it's that much different than any generation that has preceded us. It's still a matter of focus. One more, are you click there? Go one for me. While I was sharing, I was on Facebook, this little note popped up, and I'm not trying to make a political statement, that's not what I'm trying to do. But because a lot of our news media today is attacking our present administration, attacking actually the way our world is going, and I don't mean to offend you in what you believe is right and wrong this morning, but I do know there's a big attack upon people, and it's not a gathering together. It's not a uniting. It's becoming a more individualistic society. What I think, what I want, what benefits me, versus there was a time where we united together. Maybe even more so. And many times adversity does that. It brings us together, but sometimes adversity drives us apart too. But I've been watching and been noticing that there's been a big challenge. Well, one little kid came on, and it was this. He said, why would a billionaire want to become the president of the United States of America? Now, I'm not trying to ask you to think about the ramifications of his philosophy, but in our world, we basically, the United States, say if you have all the money in the world, the assets of the world, you have achieved the pinnacle of success. If you're a billionaire, you have the power of the you have more power than many presidents have ever had, because you can buy and do what you want to do. So why would this man, and there was a caption, take the ridicule of everybody under the sun? Why would he do that? You know, as Christians, whichever you believe it or not, we're struggling with the concept of authority today. Authority is under attack in our country. And I may have discussed this before, but every form of authority is being attacked today. We don't want authority, we want individualism. I want to be the authority of my life. How many graduations will say, you are the author of your destiny. You will be the one that, and that sounds great as far as a one for the Gipper, but how many high school graduates, how many young individuals will die within the next year that they had not planned on? How many will get cancer? How many will drop out of school discouraged and disillusioned? I'm not trying to be a morbid individual. I'm like you. I'm a man of reality. These are the things they're going to face in this world. So why would somebody come and give everything that we as this world has said is the culmination of life? Why would you do it? And one writer said, because he cared for his country. And that's exactly the imagery that we have of what Jesus Christ did for us when he came to this earth. Why would the sovereign God of this universe, the very Son of God, which had everything that heaven has to offer, and for many of us as Christians, we say, man, that's the ultimate thing in life, isn't it? Excuse me, one day we'll die, and we'll go to be in heaven, a place where there's no more sin, there's no more suffering, no more sorrow, no more challenges that'll be faced. But he was there. Why did he struggle enough to come down to this earth and deal with it? Because he loved this world. Not just the structure of this world, but he loved the people of this world. God says, I love this world so much that I gave my son. But the struggle that it was with is that when he came to this earth, so many people missed who he was. If you take your Bibles, I'd like to just briefly look, if I might, and everybody laughs when I say briefly. Look at a portion of Scripture. It's found in Matthew chapter 22. In my devotions, in my traveling, I came back to this parable many times. Are we not hearing? Is that any better?
I don't know. People say that they can hear you, but not very well.
Oh, well that's, for me, not all bad.
I went back and listened, and it's loud.
Oh, okay.
So,
wow. So I never had to stop and say, you're too soft in all my years of doing this. Well, as I was sharing, I was directed to this very interesting parable that Jesus was teaching. And if you want the context to why he is writing this, because his last week of ministry, and we've looked at this before, was a very passionate outreach to people. He was outreaching to the people that God had created. They were called Jews. God had made of them a great nation. Even in this sordid background they had, God had raised them up, made a nation out of one individual who even had no children. He brought them to become one of the greatest nations, and became so big that even this world didn't know what to do with them. And there was a lot of those challenges that ensued. But he wanted them, though, in time to be brought back, because for some reason, as humanity, again, allows us to do, they had started to turn away from the things of God. And instead of accepting what God was doing, they started to challenge. And so he was writing with this passion, not only to maybe change, but also to teach for the future, to help us understand. And as I was watching, times just really haven't changed all that much. I mean, the same basic problems that we're going through, although they may be administered in a bit different way or with different modes and methodology, the heart of man has not changed. The conscience of man, the struggles of man haven't changed all that dramatically. And people were struggling with it. If you think of the context, and if you're not, if you go back to Matthew chapter 1, think with me for just a little bit as Jesus had come to this earth to try to turn people back to God. And it is a challenge today, because I see that as one of the greater challenges of ministry today, is to try to get people turned back to God. Because we have every opportunity. I mean, we're sitting here with technical challenges this morning. But who doesn't have the opportunity to hear the gospel message, the good news of Jesus Christ, here and around the world now? When there were times that people couldn't hear it. Now, wow, the opportunities, the downloads, the resources are present to people. But we become so busy with time that we've forgotten some of those things, or have not utilized or analyzed or committed to them. Because life in itself, what I want to do and accomplish, in many ways has superseded what God desires. So when Jesus was coming, he first came to those religious people, and they chose not to accept him. And we've looked at in the past that although he presented them the truth, we find that they chose to not accept that. In the last part of chapter 21, it says, when the leading priests and the Pharisees heard the parable, they realized he was telling the story against them, that they were the wicked farmers. And they wanted to arrest him, but they were afraid of the crowds, who considered Jesus to be a prophet. Now, the parable that we missed was how God had sent, allowed the people to live here on this earth and to tend his vineyard. And all they had to do was honor and acknowledge and pay the rent. But in so doing, they had to acknowledge that there was someone in authority. That it's not at all strange, but yet it's becoming even stranger in our society to think as if I borrow something or I rent something that I don't have to pay for it. Then I agreed. There were conditions. If I, as a farmer, rented this land and I went out and said, well, okay, I will rent this for so much an acre and I don't pay that rent, don't we go, wait a second here. You are obligated to do that. But we start to see a society says, oh, yeah, I agree, but I couldn't, so I didn't. Why does that change because I can't do something? It doesn't. But many times our thinking it does. And even the religious had chosen to say, I don't want to follow God's commands or conditions. The songs we sang this morning, they're very powerful if you really stop and think about it. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. Now, anybody know what the context of that song was actually written for? That was a marriage. That was more a marriage of when a couple marries, they gathered together, and it was a commitment they had to this union, that I'll go where you want me to go, stay where you want me to stay, be what you want me to be. We've taken this and broadened it, then realized that's what God wants to do. That's what Jesus allows us to do, is to do what God has called us to do. But in our society, unless unless I don't think, or I don't want, or... So it's really hard to talk about commitment and use the commitment of marriage, for example, in our relationship to God, because today we're really struggling with that type of commitment. Staying when I don't feel happy, or staying when things are not easy, staying when life gets tough, or isn't the way I hope for. Well, this parable then continues on after the parable of the farmers. He goes to something that I think is even more intriguing. And it begins in verse 1 of Matthew chapter 22. Jesus also told them other parables. And to be reminding, a parable is what? How would you define or say a parable is used as?
Story with meaning.
It's a story that has a meaning. It's not just something that is told with time, but it's told with something designed to be thought and analyzed and put into action. Now, when he shared with parables, he didn't really want everybody to always understand these. And that sounds strange, but a person who thinks they understand and doesn't do it tends to be even more damaging than the person that doesn't understand it at all. And he wanted those people to follow him because they understood the cost and the commitment. And this is something that I have started to wonder in Christianity today, whether we realize saying yes to Jesus has come with a cost and a price, or whether we just want the benefit package. It's kind of like we all like the packages of insurance when we receive the benefit, but how many have ever balked when you received that you have to pay for it? You know, it isn't free. Yeah, you get a benefit if something happens, but it is a cost. And the insurance industry is saying, we'll cover that cost, but everybody has to pay into this system. You know, if nobody pays their premiums, can they cover you? It's impossible. It's a business. That's how they do it. And that's been kind of lost in Christendom today, is that when we said yes to Jesus, we said we'll help in every area to help fund, to provide, to be, to do what God has called us to do. Not just receive the benefit package at the end. Well, when he shared this parable, there were some interesting observations that he was going to make about how a certain group of people had adapted and adopted what they believed God was teaching. So in verse 2 it says, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by a story of a king who prepared a great wedding feast for his son. And when the banquet was ready, he sent his servant to notify those who were invited. But here's something that comes up that is very interesting. But they all refused. Now, to make this as simple as I can, here was the king of the land, king of the country, who has given the authority, and people were under his authority. He, for the joy of wanting people to be involved in his life, in his son's life, in his son's marriage, invited the people to come. And he went to the nobles first, which is kind of interesting, but it's not. I mean, that's how nobility does it. You do the same thing. Don't you invite the people you're most comfortable with to come first? Sure you do. So nobility invited nobility to come. Now in Luke's gospel, he shares who these three notables were. He shares, number one, that there were some who didn't come because they had land. So he sent an invitation to people whose worldly values were based on land, who had been given land by the king, who had received everything that they owned from the king. And when he asked them, would you come and enjoy my time of happiness because of what I've given you, what did they say? No. I just bought a piece of land and I've got to go see it. Well, that's interesting. You know, land is valuable. And to many people, possessions of land, things that you can monetarily grasp, have last value. It's the only thing that lasts, as one individual said. But does land last? Well, it's an interesting concept. Yes, land lasts, but who leaves? The owner is the one that leaves. The land is there, but the owner leaves. So you may focus on something you think is lasting, but you're not lasting. And then he sends one to an individual who had just bought a team of oxen. And he said, you know, it's great that you're getting married, but I've got this team of oxen and I got to go out and take care of it. Well, I used to laugh that this was something that didn't ever used to take place until the internet came along. How many of you ever bought something sight unseen? Or you saw a picture on YouTube or Craigslist or somewhere, and then you get there and you go, that's not the picture I thought it was. So we do that. You can Amazon. How many of you ever bought something on Amazon and when you got it, you go, man, that's not what it looked like in the picture. So here's an individual who's saying, you know, I understand, yes, you're the king, and you have given me all these things, but I just ordered something on Amazon, and I need to check it out, so I don't have time to come you. Where did all this stuff come from? The king. The king is the one who had given them the resource to have all these things. Have you ever noticed that things get in the way of doing things for God or being with God? And the last one was matrimony. They sent to a man and he said, you know, I just got married and you know, I got to spend time with my wife. And that sounds good, doesn't it? It really does. But the challenge is, who should have been the most excited about going to a wedding? Someone who had just gotten married, shouldn't they? Shouldn't they say, man, this is exciting for me? But he said, no, I'm not going to come to your matrimony because I'm going to spend time with my wife. And it sounds good. I've been a minister many, many years, and it's amazing how many times that a spouse or children have become an excuse for not doing something for God. It's amazing. I'd love to come to church, but we have family coming, and so we can't be there. And many times that sounds good on the outside, but I've also had some of those people say to me, and we want to witness to